EFcc for over 6 years has been presided over by acting chairman. So this exercise will be an effort to have a chairman that will be substantive, a chairman that will have all the powers. And Nigerians are very interested in the EFcc, and therefore, for the nominee, this is an opportunity for you to speak to us, and by doing so, you'll be speaking to Nigerians, and probably even the international community that the EFcc relates with. I will therefore list whoever raises his hand or her hand for the questions, but I want us to agree on the number of questions and the minutes that a person could take to ask those questions or make some comments, because they may not necessarily be questions, but comments. So how many questions do we limit this to? Okay, it appears there is one question is like is the consensus, because I've had only one voice that is saying 2. So one question, how many minutes? Okay, 2 minutes, 2 minutes. Chief Whip, please do your work. 2 minutes is what has been agreed. So after a minute and a half, you could, without disturbing any of our colleagues, you could signify you have only half a minute left.
Mr. President, distinguished senators of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, I am deeply honored and privileged to stand here before you as the pioneer operative and a presidential nominee for the office of the Chairman, Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, for the purpose of screening to that office sequel to my nomination by His Excellency, the President and Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, His Excellency, President Muhammadu Buhari, GCFR. Mr. President, distinguished senators, let me start again by thanking the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria for finding me competent and deserving as the Chairman of the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, and to also assure him, and indeed Nigerians, that the confidence he has on me will be proven beyond doubt at the end of my term in office. Mr. President, distinguished senators, my name is ABDULRASHEED BAWA. I'm a 40-year-old Nigerian, a public servant, and a detective of the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, with all the powers, privileges, and immunities of a police officer as enshrined in the EFcc Act. Mr. President, distinguished senators, I hold a bachelor's degree in economics some 20 years ago, and I also have a master's degree in international affairs and diplomacy, both of which I obtained from Usmanu Danfodio University, Sokoto. Mr. President, distinguished senators, I'm a certified fraud examiner from the prestigious American-based Association of Certified Fraud Examiners, which is the largest anti-fraud organization in the world with over 85,000 members and members drawn from over 140 countries. I'm also a certified anti-money laundering specialist, which is also an American-based association that dedicates itself in enhancing the capacity of financial crime fighters around the world. Mr. President, I've also been trained by the Federal Bureau of Investigation and also the National Crime Agency of the United States and United Kingdom, respectively. United Nations Office of Drug and Crime are also an organization that trained me, the KPMG, the World Bank. Locally here in Nigeria, I've been trained by the Nigeria Police, the Department of State Security Service, and of course, the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission. Mr. President, my first and only job in my young and youthful life is with the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, which I joined 16 years ago as part of the then drive of recruitment and training of EFCC's homegrown investigators. I joined the EFCC in 2004, and together with other 116 Nigerians, we were trained in the art of law enforcement and financial crime investigation. An open graduation from the police college where we were trained happens to be 9th overall out of the 117 officers that were trained. I was posted to Lagos then, Mr. President, distinguished senators, and I rose through the ranks from an ordinary team member to become a team leader. It is on record in EFCC that I happen to be the first regular staff of the EFCC to be appointed a team leader in the midst of all police officers that have dominated the scene of operations. I became a sectional head, and I also became a zonal head. And by way of emphasis, Mr. President, distinguished senators, I'm humbled to say also that I happen to be, as at today, the only EFCC officer to have headed 3 different zones. I was first appointed a zonal head of EFCC in Ibadan, and after my service there, I was transferred to Port Harcourt as the zonal head. And currently, before this noble nomination of me to the office of the executive chairman of EFCC, I'm heading the biggest and the largest operational base of the EFCC in Lagos, where I supervised 604 officers and men of the EFCC, including, of course, supervision of over 8,000 legacy cases and ongoing cases in the Lagos Zonal Office. Last year alone, distinguished senators, despite the incidences of COVID-19 pandemic, as well as the end of SARS protest, which hit the Lagos Zonal Office more than any other zone, we were able to secure over 220 convictions. We also recovered over 10.9 billion, as well as over 1.9 million US dollars at the Lagos Zonal Office. Mr. President, distinguished senators, as I said earlier on, I've been in the EFCC for 16 years. I've participated in several high-profile cases that has taken me around the world. I'm versed in the investigation of advance fee fraud, money laundering, public sector corruption, and other financial crimes-related issues. I've testified in several courts around the country, leading to several convictions and recovery of hundreds of billions of naira. Mr. President, distinguished senators, I'm not only an investigator that investigates and prosecute offenders. Because of my expertise, I'm humbled to state also that I'm also a trainer at the EFcc Academy. As a young man coming out of college, I was pinpointed and I was assigned, among other officers, to be part of the training of the course that is immediately after us, which is course 2. I've also participated in the training of course 3, course 4, as course 5. Most recently, I was heading the capacity development division of the EFcc Academy, where I was in charge with development of curriculum for the betterment of our officers. Mr. President, distinguished senators, I wish to state here that in all my career at the EFcc, the provisions of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, the extant laws of this country, rules and regulations within the EFcc have always and will always guide my actions if confirmed by this hallowed chamber as the next executive chairman of the EFcc. I'm not unmindful of the enormous responsibility before me and my colleagues, but I believe we are up to the task. And I also believe that we will not fix the blame of the past. We will accept our own responsibility for the future. The fear of God, national interest, patriotism in us, and the fact that we are young men, the future of this country is with us, are the driving force that will ensure that come what may, at the end of my tenure, I will leave the EFcc a better place. Mr. President, distinguished senators, permit me to state here also that the EFcc is apparently the only cosmopolitan agency in Nigeria looking at the composition of the board of the EFcc. You have representation from the Ministry of Finance, from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, from the Ministry of Justice. You have Comptroller General of Customs, you have Comptroller General of Immigration, you have Comptroller General of Prisons, CBN Governor, Director General of the DSS, Director General of NIA, among others, which makes it very easy for me, if confirmed by this hallowed chamber, to be able to relate with other security agencies in this country for the purpose of achieving the mandate of this government of ridding this country of all forms of corruption as well as economic and financial crimes. And to our strategic partners around the world, particularly in the United States of America, United Kingdom, South Africa, etc., I intend to work with them closely, sharing information and intelligence in order to attain our mutual objectives as well as our independent objectives as well. But paramount of which is close to my heart is the fact that we need to repatriate all our stolen assets for the benefit and the betterment of all Nigerians here at home. Mr. President, distinguished senators, I'm not unaware of the fact that my nomination has caused a lot of hope for the teeming and millions of youth around the country and the world at large. I want to state here, Mr. President, distinguished senators, that I'm going to give them a very good representation in the governance of this country. so that at the end of the day, more youth will be given huge responsibilities in this country. Let me conclude, Mr. President, distinguished senators, by stating that it is a dream of every patriotic Nigerian to see Nigeria growing to a greater height. And I hope and pray, Mr. President, distinguished senators, that if confirmed, I will live to that task to contribute my quota in seeing that this country is taken to a greater height. There is no better way to end my modest address, which I'm humbled to address this distinguished gathering, than to pledge to Nigeria, my country, to be faithful, loyal, and honest, to serve Nigeria with all my strength, to defend her unity, and uphold our honor and glory. So help me God. Thank you very much, Mr. President. Thank you very much, distinguished senators, for inviting me to this hallowed chamber.
Mr. President, ordinarily, there would have been no need to ask this young man any question. Mr. President, I've been here, this will be my 6th year in the Senate, and I've seen so many nominees come before us. Mr. President, I have not seen any as eloquent in his presentation. Ordinarily, I would have said, take a bow and go. But Mr. President, clearly he's a very, very brilliant young man. Within a couple of minutes, he's been able to showcase himself. I will plead with my colleagues who share in my belief that ordinarily should take a bow and go. But I think they should be given a chance, Mr. President, for him to further showcase himself. He is a good product. That is why I like to begin, Mr. President, by thanking Mr. President and Commander-in-Chief President Muhammadu Buhari for this nomination. This nomination is unique and it's an aspirational nomination. It's a nomination that has generated hope for millions of our youth in this country. Mr. President, not too long ago, we all recall the incident, what transpired at the Lekki toll gate. Clearly, the youth at that toll gate needed an opportunity to express themselves. Mr. President, with this nomination, the youth of this country can now sit in offices and make those very crucial and fundamental decisions on how Nigeria should be governed. And there cannot be a better platform than the office of the chairman of EFcc. So I want to thank Mr. President for finding this young man worthy. In fact, going through his CV, Mr. President, I was impressed. But in hearing him speak to that CV, Mr. President, so I thank President Muhammadu Buhari for this nomination. For that reason, and for the second reason, Mr. President, this is the first time we are sticking within the local EFcc environment to pick one of their own, one of their pioneer cadets to govern this institution. And it's a great thing. That was always the intendment behind the establishment of that EFcc Act. That yes, at the commencement, there will be borrowings from other security agencies until such time that we're able to groom people who will take over. President Muhammadu Buhari has determined, and we all agree with him, that this is the time and this is the young man. We are very proud of you.
Thank you very much.
The members of the House of Reps who are here, they have every reason to be also proud of your achievement. So too is the Speaker and the members of the Kebbi State House of Assembly who are also here, and members of his family. You have every reason to be proud of this young man, just the way we are. I will support this nomination. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Distinguished colleagues, the Deputy Senate President in his presentation or remarks said, ordinarily he would say, take a bow. Please, I want us to allow this young man to address Nigerians and even the international community. So let's at least exhaust some of these issues that Nigerians want to hear, because we are not the only one. And therefore, this take a bow for now should bow. Leader of the Senate.
For me, all I will say at this point to my own distinguished colleagues is to beat my chest and say that this is what we from Kebbi State can produce. And that once we get the chance, we will be able to bring the best into the table for Nigerians to appreciate, so that our contributions to the development of this country will be well appreciated. But having said that, Mr. President, it is important, like you said, for us to ask certain questions, if for nothing, but only to draw the attention of the young man to the pitfalls that we have experienced over the years in this institution. I was a director and special assistant to the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Ekaite, when the bill establishing the EFcc was brought. And we noticed part of the bill, the reason why certain issues came to be as they were. I'm happy that this is the first time those who were recruited in 2003 have now come of age, and we are returning the EFcc back to its base. Now, the experiences of the past are a lot that all of us have to learn from. None of the chairmen of the EFcc, from New Ribadu down to Magu, successfully concluded their tenure without controversy. Now, for you as a young man, I want to challenge you and ask you, how are you going to set up your operations as chairman of EFcc, knowing where you are, knowing the colleagues with whom you have started, and knowing those who are senior to you, but who maybe belong to another institution, who are now there? How are you going to work and set up the institution so that it works for Nigeria and that the controversies of the past are not repeated? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, distinguished colleagues. Delegation from Kebbi State that came to witness the screening and confirmation of ABDULRASHEED BAWA as chairman of EFcc. Mr. Chairman, let me start by saying that ABDULRASHEED BAWA is from my constituency. And we live very close to each other. I know him to be very thorough, meticulous, and very diligent in the performance of his duty. I agree with you that we should allow the senators to ask as many questions as possible, because we really have a very good product, a product that we can sell anywhere. And Nigerians will be very happy, will be very delighted to hear from him how he intends to restructure the EFcc so that it can perform optimally. Mr. President, since we are limited to only one question, the only question I will ask is that there is allegation in the press, and particularly in the social media, that the seized and forfeited assets at Port Harcourt were not properly disposed of. And I want your response on this so that the Senate, Nigerians, and indeed the international community will know truly what happened. Mr. President, as I said earlier, we have a good product. We want him to tell Nigerians how he intends to restructure the EFcc, and we really want him to answer as many questions as possible. We don't want that situation where we will tell the nominee, take a bow and go. No. This one is a nomination like no other. So he is competent. He is the right person for this job, and perhaps being a pioneer staff at EFcc, he will do a lot for this country.
About the EFcc, then the Establishment Act itself. Mr. President, distinguished senators, the EFcc is backed by a law passed by this hallowed chamber or this National Assembly, and Section 7, and of course Section 6 of the EFcc Establishment Act clearly define the functions of the EFcc, as well as special powers and the laws that the EFcc is empowered to enforce. The provision of the Act itself, which is the Establishment Act 2004, the provisions of the Money Laundering Prohibition Act, the provisions of Advance Fee Fraud and Other Related Offences Act, the provisions of Failed Bank Recovery of Debt Act, the provisions of the Banks and Other Financial Institutions Act, Miscellaneous Offences Act, as well as sections of the Penal Code and Criminal Code that relate to economic and financial crimes. However, in 2015, this National Assembly passed the Cybercrime Act, which EFcc is among the institutions that is empowered to enforce. The Federal Revenue Act 2007 also came on board, in which we are also empowered to enforce certain provisions. Distinguished senators, that is the law or the act that the EFcc empowered to enforce. And throughout our history, the Commission have tried its modest best to see to it that those provisions of the law are being upheld. But of course, along the line, like any other institution or organization, there are pitfalls because we are not perfect, we are not human beings. What I will do to reposition the EFcc, or what I envisage the EFcc to do, is to ensure that we work on our own standard operational procedure to improve on the standard operational procedures, so much so that all that is expected of us is being written down somewhere in a document, to try as much as possible to curtail the usage of discretion from the office of the executive chairman down to the ordinary investigator in the EFcc. We are looking forward to an EFcc whereby I, as executive chairman, if I give an instruction to a junior officer, he will look at my face and say, "Sir, I have understood your instruction, but I will not be able to do it because of so section of the rules and regulations governing the EFcc." We hope that if confirmed by this Senate, we are going to be more transparent, we are going to be more accountable. We have, of course, the lingering problem or issues bordering on management of assets, etc., etc. We hope, if given the opportunity, my colleagues and I will embark on the digitalization of the processes in the EFcc. In essence, what I'm saying is that we are going to embrace technology to enable us keep our records properly so that, as at when due, if Nigerians are action questioned, it's just a matter of pressing a button. Distinguished senators, I also want to emphasize here regarding the issue of repositioning. I've talked about processes and procedures and the law, but the backbone of every organization is in its human resource. I hope and pray that we will still come back to this chamber, of course, for proper appropriation, etc., to enable us build the capacity of our staff at the EFcc to meet up with the current challenges of new typologies of crime, as well as trends in money laundering, etc., so that at the end of the day, our vision of getting this country rid of economic and financial crimes is actualized. EFcc, as of today, we have, of course, an academy. We need to work on it. We need to reorganize it so that it meets up with the challenge of the current world. I've talked about the issue of synergy between the EFcc and sister security and law enforcement agencies in the country, as well as the work I envisage to do together with our own foreign strategic partners. We are going to work on that. We are going to strengthen it. EFcc is not a lone ranger. We are going to reach out. The job of fighting economic and financial crimes is for everybody to be on board. And we will ensure that because we don't have monopoly of knowledge, everybody is on board to ensure that at least we rid this country of economic and financial crimes. Going forward, and in relation to this, Mr. President, distinguished senator, the EFcc, under my watch, and if confirmed by this hallowed chamber, will work on proactive approach rather than reactive approach in the process of good governance in this country, rather than fighting wars of corruption. We understood at the Commission that there is difference between fighting corrupt people and fighting corruption. Fighting corruption is about good governance. It's about working on these institutions of government to tell them, areas where they need to work to avoid leakages, etc., etc. We're going to work on that, and hopefully the EFcc is going to be a better place in that regard. Distinguished Senator Muhammad Adamu Aleru from my constituency, thank you very much, sir, for kind words, asks about the issue of sales of trucks in Port Harcourt. Thank you very much, distinguished senator, for asking that question. Anybody that is familiar with the processes and workings of the EFcc knows that even the executive chairman of the EFcc doesn't have the powers to dispose a single asset. That responsibility lies with the office of the secretary of the commission. I'm saying this, I'm starting from that end to confirm to Nigerians and indeed this chamber that I, as zonal head of the EFcc, never for once sold a single asset in Port Harcourt. I never did. The then secretary of the commission, together with 3 directors and other staff from the headquarters, flew into Port Harcourt and disposed of the trucks and other assets in them that were forfeited to the federal government of Nigeria. Sequel to our own singular effort as part of the reformation that I brought to the Port Harcourt Zonal Office. Let me put it on record, Mr. President, distinguished senators, that when I took over the Port Harcourt Zonal Office in January 2019, the year before, the Zonal Office recorded only 33 convictions. But because of the way we transformed the Zonal Office, we recorded an unprecedented 216 convictions within a year. 216 convictions. We never sold anything in Port Harcourt Zonal Office. It was the head office that did everything. We don't know how the payments were made. We don't know who buy. We don't know who lost out in the auction, etc., etc. That is for the record. And besides, distinguished senators, assuming Assuming we even did that, the EFCC could have been the first to punish me. They could have investigated me. They could have even prosecuted me. But the then Director of Operations, who was our Director of Operations, who happens to be the acting chairman of the commission as at now, was the one that even posted me to Lagos, to head. Assuming I have something or skeletal or something bad that I did, he couldn't have been thinking of giving me high responsibility to manage the biggest operational base in the EFCC.
Executive Chairman of EFCC, Mr. Nominee, where I come from, the tortoise is reputed to be a very wise animal. So towards the end of the life of the tortoise called 3 of his children, and then put a particular question to them. So the first one, he asked, how many times will something happen to you and you learn? So the first said 3 times. After the first, second, and third one, he will learn from his mistakes. So he asked the second one how many times. The second one replied that after 2 times, he will learn from his mistakes. Then he asked the last one. Last one paused and said, I will not allow anything to happen to me. I will learn from the mistake of others. You're not going to be the first chairman of EFCC. You know the circumstances others came. You know how they managed their affairs. You know how they ended. You know that they came out of the EFCC and became like ordinary citizens. And of course, you know that at the end of their life, they'll meet their creator to account for their actions. So I'm going to advise you to rather learn from those mistakes, those ones made, because ultimately, your tenure will end. And then you'll be like any of us. And you also meet your creator at the end of your stay here. So I'd like to advise you, because you've been there, to check those mistakes they made in both the operations, their human relations, the way they did their job, how they answered, how they responded to people, and of course, how they carry their responsibilities and be able to learn from those mistakes. So on this note, I want to wish you good luck.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, I'm Dr. Gabriel Suswam, Benin Northeast. ABDULRASHEED BAWA,
yes.
I've looked at your CV, I've listened to you. From your CV and articulation, you are eminently qualified for the position for which you are nominated for. I'm also happy that in your presentation, you make reference copiously to the extant laws that set EFCC up and others. And so I assume that you are very conversant with the provisions of the EFCC Act. My question is on Section 2(1)(a) sub 2 of the EFCC Act, which stipulate for qualification outside of academic qualification. ABDULRASHEED, within the context and the definition of that section, are you qualified to be appointed as EFCC chairman? Mr. President, it's a straightforward question.
I'm Mohamed Ali Ndume, representing Borno South. Congratulations, ABDULRASHEED, for your nomination.
Thank you very much.
But you know the task before you.
Yes.
It's a big one. First of all, I will assume, and I think you know what UWO means, unexplained with order.
Yes.
And you know what unexplained with act is. And you know, as an international investigator, especially as it relates to money laundering, asking you to be the executive chairman of EFCC in Nigeria and to succeed without the unexplained with order is like asking you to do the impossible. Are you going to push for the unexplained with act and order that is very basic and necessary in fighting money laundering and financial crimes. In answering my question, you may wish to highlight on what that term means. As it is, Nigeria is one of the only countries around, that has not invoked the Unexplained Wealth Act or order. And without that, the fight against financial crime, money laundering will just be a scratch on the surface.
I represent the Central Senatorial District. Mr. Nominee, I just want to join the rest of my colleagues in identifying with the fact that per adventure, this Senate confirms your appointment. This would have raised a lot of hope with respect to the expectations of Nigerians from not just you, but the youth population. And as one of parliamentarians who also can safely describe themselves as products of the struggle of Nigerian youths, I want to say that I'll be one of the people who have such expectation. And you made one point here which actually struck me. You drew a line of demarcation between fighting corruption and fighting corrupt people. For me, that's very profound, that's very fundamental, and it speaks to the whole essence of our anti-graft crusade. In other words, it is my own expectation, it is my expectation that under your leadership, the EFcc, while trying to catch up with corrupt people, will do everything possible to ensure that as an institution, it continues to emphasize on the need for government to address those fundamentals that will continue to enhance corruption. And finally, how, as the chairman, would you ensure that it is not just, the Yahoo boys who are prosecuted? How will you ensure that convictions are also secured with respect to the high-profile cases? Thank you.
Mr. President, distinguished senators, the provision of the law is very clear. It says that the person to be so appointed as chairman should be a serving or retired security or law enforcement officer. Now the question is, am I a law enforcement officer? Yes, I am, because by the provision of Section 2, Section 8, subsection 5, that the EFcc, officers of the EFcc, in the discharge of their duty, have all the powers, authorities, privileges, and immunities of a police officer. We have been trained, as I said during my opening remark, as law enforcement officers. We have been trained in musketry, handling of arms, etc., etc. Have been trained to arrest, to detain, to interrogate, and to also testify in court, which we have done and which I have been doing since I joined the EFcc. So in that regard, I'm eminently qualified. The second issue there is that the officer to be so nominated must have 15 years cognate experience in law enforcement. I've been in the EFcc since 2004. If we do the math, distinguished senators, you can see that I'm well over 15 years as a law enforcement officer. The third issue is that the officer to be appointed should not be below an assistant commissioner of police or its equivalent. Now, I'm not a police officer, but the equivalent of my rank is the equivalent of that of an assistant commissioner of police. So in answer to distinguished senator question on whether I'm qualified, the answer is yes, I'm qualified. Distinguished senator Wamako asked whether or not I'm going to retain police officers or whether or not I'm going to return all of them. Mr. President, distinguished senators, the issue of secondment or the secondment of personnel in public service from one agency to another is an issue of need. If the need arises, you second. If the need did not arise, you second or you will not second at all to your organization. As I said, we are going to review the process. We are looking at the situation where we will have a very robust and articulated establishment. If the need arises for us to detain some of the police officers, we will retain them. If the need allows us to return them back, we will return them back. After all, we are all serving the same government, we are all Nigerians, and of course, we all desire that we have a better Nigeria. I just want to add here, Mr. President, distinguished senators, that we at the EFcc, we are very, very grateful with the foundation laid by the police authority at the EFcc. All our leadership, we are not unmindful of the fact that they were all serving or retired police officers, from the pioneer chairman, Mr. Ribadu, to the current acting executive chairman, Mohammed Umar Abba. We have had a very good, cordial relationship with them. They have done their best for the country, and other staff also that have joined them, seasoned officers that we learned the job from Mr. Lamurde to Mr. Wakili, etc., to mention but a few, Deputy, etc. They are police officers that we look up to, and that's about it. I think we will look at the possibility whether we need them or not. Distinguished Senator Indume asks a question regarding the unexplained wealth order. Coincidentally, Mr. President, distinguished Senator, I'm the desk officer of the unexplained wealth order at the EFcc, because during the course of my career, particularly in the last 5 years, I'm not aware of any detective at the EFcc that had worked closely with the National Crime Agency of the United Kingdom. So I'm fully aware about the unexplained wealth order. But there is certain provision at the EFcc, in the EFcc Establishment Act, that more or less, gave us also these powers. And that, if I may, quote the act, I have a copy here, distinguished senators, Section 7, Section 7, subsection 1b states that the Commission has the power to cause investigation to be conducted into the properties of any person if it appears to the Commission that the person's lifestyle and the extent of the properties are not justified by his source of income. Meaning, without any complaint, without anything, if it comes to our knowledge that you have amassed so much properties that are not justified by your sources of income, the EFcc can ask questions. And that is what, the simple definition or explanation regarding the unexplained wealth order. You have this property, the UK will ask you, what is this property for? And that is it. You explain, if you explain that, yes, this is how you earn it, so be it. If you did not explain, then they can further their investigation to determine how you acquired it. So I think looking at this provision, we are covered for now until we are seeing how other jurisdictions have fared with this unexplained wealth order. The next question is from distinguished Senator Markel. Thank you very much for your kind words. And you asked regarding the issue of Yahoo convictions versus that of high-profile cases. Let me put it on record, Mr. President, distinguished senators, that at the EFcc, we have over 90% success rate in court. Over 90% success rate in court. For every 100 cases that we charge to court, we secured convictions on 90. As I said during my opening remark, provisions of Cybercrime Prohibition Act as well as Advanced Fee Fraud and Other Related Offences Act, are part of the acts that we are empowered to enforce. We are enforcing our laws based on the provisions of the law. That is regarding the issue of Yahoo Yahoo. Yes, there are simple cases that will file 1 or 2 count charges, and normally the suspect or the accused or the defendants are young, Nigerians that they can easily plead guilty, particularly with the passage of the Administration of Criminal Justice Act 2015. They can easily plead again and continue their life. But the high-profile cases, we are dealing with politically exposed persons, people that have held position of power and authority, people that have access to funds and they can hire, the best lawyers in town. And of course, their reputation and what they stand for, calls to question. So of course, we need to iron it out. We need to have rigorous trial in court, and trials normally takes a very long time in our courts because of hurdles of trial, etc., etc. And particularly because of the issue of fair hearing. We need to be fair to the defendant and everybody. So we present our case as prosecution, and the defense is entitled to open its defense and open its case. But despite that, we have also tried, in respect of high-profile cases that the EFcc have charged to court, we have secured quite a number of convictions in that regard. I intend to improve on that. Of course, we diligently prosecuted our cases. That is why we are securing the convictions that we have. But we will tend to have more working relationship with the courts for them to understand training and training, for them to understand some of these typologies. And let me also use this opportunity, Mr. President, distinguished senators, there is a way we can work on particularly amending, of course, some of our concerns regarding some of the emerging issues on AJA, etc. I believe there will be more better forum to discuss some of these issues on how some of these cases can be accelerated in their determination in our courts. Thank you very much.
Senator OLUREMI.
Nominee, Madam BAWA.
Yes.
Seeing you here today gladdens my heart. And I want to thank Mr. President for showing it to the rest of the youth in Nigeria that the youth too have a place at the table. You're coming here today. I don't have any question for you. What you've shown us is diligence, perseverance, hard work, which are all the requirements to get to the top. But I want to just give you a little motherly advice. Because one, this is an appointment. The shoes you are going to be filling is a big shoe. Temptations will come. People who are not even your age, they fall in. But I'm just going to, I believe that's your wife there.
Yes.
Pray for your husband very well. I'll pray for you too.
Thank you very much.
Because we want to see a lot of youth like you showing the other youths around Nigeria that if you want to get to the top, you don't have to be destructive. We want to dialogue. I'm 60 years old now. I'm working so that other people like you can get to and fix the Nigeria that we are going to hand over to you. So I'm glad you've spoken, and I expect you to walk the talk. God bless you.
Thank you very much.
Mr. President.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, the Chair, very distinguished colleagues. I am Senator Abdullahi Adamu, and I represent Nasarawa West District. May I start by congratulating the nominee, ABDULRASHEED BAWA, for this honor that the nomination has done you. And the nomination, through your introduction here, have brought some coloring of Kebbi as a state. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
I want to start by commenting you from the introduction of your person, your understanding of the subject matter of the organization that you are now going to serve as Chief Executive Officer, Chairman, the EFcc. And in doing so, I want to congratulate the organization itself for producing people like you, their own product. You can, in the parlance of the politician, you are an indigene of EFcc. And I commend the organization for producing officers like you. I am very sure that you are aware that fighting corruption is one of the cardinal points in the manifesto of this administration. And you are also probably aware that in this National Assembly, the Ninth National Assembly, sorry, this nice one, we passed a bill on not too young to run. Maybe we will extend to say not too young to stamp out corruption from this country. Having served for 16 years, I want you to kindly search and go through your memories and share with this hallowed chamber what you think, in your opinion, and from your personal experience, you will say you have identified as one singular issue that the organization of the EFcc has not been able to overcome properly and properly, so as to be able to deliver fully on its mandate. What do you see as that single issue that remains a problem for the EFcc, that you will take as a personal challenge as the new Chief Executive Officer and you try to solve? If there's such an issue, can you share with us, please?
From the Cross-Metropolitan State, representing Lagos West Senatorial District. Mr. President, distinguished colleague, let me join others in commending Mr. President for this wonderful nominee he has sent to the Senate. At least we can see a paradigm shift, a generational shift, that is, the young are actually taking over. And also let me commend the nominee for the assurances, reassurances he has given to Nigerian youth by this appointment. But my question will be this. Mr. Nominee, there have been issues about the EFcc recoveries in terms of fund and properties, where amount recovered is different from amount remitted to the government coffers. It has been an issue that has been in the front burner from time to time. I want you to tell this distinguished Senate what you will be doing differently to ensure that what is recovered by EFcc in terms of funding, in terms of cash, actually reflect what is remitted into the government coffers. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Adamu Muhammad Bukachua, representing Bauchi North Senatorial District. My question is only one and simple. I want to congratulate the young man for being so nominated by the President. And in fact, I also want to extend that congratulations to Mr. President for nominating BAWA to head the EFcc. ABDULRASHEED, sorry. You see, in the 8th Senate, attempts have been made, but because of some issues, I think, of either personal interest or some other political issues, the attempt for Mr. President to appoint a chairman has failed. Now, there are issues, Mr. Nominee, that are either vague or misunderstood by some of us here, and indeed the general public. These issues are, although my distinguished brother Yai has touched on some of them, the issues you have mentioned in your CV, that you headed investigations from the former Minister of Petroleum to other companies, and according to your CV, you have recovered so many properties here in Nigeria and indeed abroad. Now, I think you have the opportunity now to educate us or to tell us what usually happens in accordance with the EFcc laws. What happens to such properties after you have ceded them to government and you have gotten your convictions in the courts and you have recovered these monies in accordance with the EFcc laws? What happened to them from that point? Because Nigerians always wonder, and it's a point of contention. Everybody was saying his mind or his thought or his ideas about what happened to them. Please explain to us and Nigerians. Thank you.
My name is Muhammad Sani Musa, representing Niger East Senatorial District. I would like to congratulate Mr. President by taking the bull by the horns for appointing this young man among all the qualified candidates to the office of the Executive Chairman of the EFcc. Mr. President, have seen your energy, have seen your audacity, he has seen your youthfulness, and he has seen your courage, not only to translate as chairman of EFcc, but as a representative of Nigeria and Nigerians internationally, because crime is international. Mr. Chairman, you have a challenge. I'm not going to pour any encomiums on you, Mr. Nominee. If by the time we confirm you as chairman, the world will look up to you. Nigerians' expectations will look on you. Crime today has turned to insecurity in Nigeria. Illicit of crime have been fueling insecurity in this country. As chairman of EFcc, you have enormous responsibility to work together with all other agencies, as you mentioned earlier, and to look also how your predecessors have occupied that office and how they have discharged their responsibilities. I will wish you well, and after some times I will want this Harlow Chamber to also have the opportunity to invite you to give us an update of what you have been able to achieve, because you are a representative of a generation now. We want to see a change. We want to see transformation. And I will pray to Allah to guide you. But I have a question. What is the relationship you have with your predecessor, who has been in acting capacity? And were you ever arrested by the same acting chairman? And what is the reason for the arrest? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. President, I am Mohammed Njima Goje, representing Gombe, Central Gombe State. Mr. Nominee, I would like to join my colleagues in congratulating you. looking at your CV and giving your eloquent presentations so far, and given the fact that you have been in FCC for the last 16 years, there's this notion, wrong or right, that EFcc is used as a tool to witch hunt some people for political and other reasons. Many people have been victims of this type of acts of EFCs whereby people are already charged and tried in the media, their names spoiled, eventually they have been found not wanting. And the allegations that politicians and other interest groups use EFCC not necessarily to fight corruption, but to fight some political and other economic causes. Given your age, as a young man, 40 years, and given the fact that you have never held any top management or political office, how do you intend to withstand pressure, which will certainly come, to use you to witch hunt some perceived enemies? Thank you.
How I intend to withstand the pressure. Mr. President, distinguished senators, the issue of political witch hunt have been there trending against the EFCC since its inception. When the EFCC came on board, certain political party was in government, but I'm aware that members of that political party were also investigated and charged to court. Currently, another political party is in power, and members of that political party were also investigated and charged to court. When it comes to the issue of trial in court, the way we operate in the EFCC, distinguished senators, is that at the end of every investigation, files are being sent to legal department to vet and see whether or not the investigation warrants any prosecution in court, whether the report has adduced in it points to prove an offense beyond reasonable doubt, before the lawyers prefer charges and, of course, file in court for them to go and defend what they said that they have found. And as I said, we are not perfect, but during answering some of my previous questions, I do state here, and I stand to be challenged by everybody, that we have 90% success rate on matters that we have charged to court. On the issue of media trial, we have a responsibility as a commission to enlighten the general public regarding our activities as a commission, as an agency of government saddled with the responsibility of investigating economic and financial crimes. Matters that are in court, Mr. President, distinguished senators, are already in the public domain. The press have the right, like indeed any other Nigerian or even non-Nigerians, to demand for those records and print them, either on print or electronic media. So it is not within our purview or control to tend to determine which matter that is in court can be published and which matter cannot be published. On the issue of young age to withstand pressure, when my appointment was announced last Tuesday, an elderly man advised me, and he said, Malam Bawa, you are now 40 years old. Even if you succeed, unlike any of your predecessors, and serve 2 terms, you are still going to be 48 and he reminded me that you will still be too young. And he said that I have a very long, long future ahead of me. I am a human being, I'm not perfect, but I assure you, Mr. President and distinguished Senator, I'm going to discharge my duties without fear or favor, without any ill will, with the conscience of the fact that I'm a human being, that after this life, I will die. And after my death, there will be judgment and there will be sentence. I only hope and pray that I and my colleagues will be able to discharge this onerous responsibility that has been bestowed on us. Senator Mohamed Sani Musa asks about my relationship with the former acting chairman, Mr. Ibrahim Magu. I have a very cordial relationship with him. I was never arrested, I was never detained by him. In fact, during the week of my nomination and to date, he even called me on phone to congratulate me for this appointment. I maintain relationship with all my predecessors, God willing, if confirmed by this Senate. I'm in contact with all of them for consultations and for advice when the need arises. So I do have a very cordial working relationship with him. Senator Bulkachua and Senator Yai asks on the issue of recovered assets and whether or not what is recovered is being remitted to the government, and also what happened to such properties. The EFcc is not only serving the public, it also serves the private sector. And recoveries are made both for the public or for the government, and of course, for individuals in the private sector. As I said during my presentation, that the Lagos Zonal Office recovered over 10.9 billion last year. All of that money does not belong to the government, either federal government or state government. Federal government as victims have their own share of the money, so also the Lagos state government, so also Ogun state government, so also various individuals, corporate entities. So anytime an EFcc chairman do mention about the recoveries he made, he mentioned about everything that he has recovered, either for the government or for the public sector. Or for the private sector. So yes, somebody may think that yes, EFcc has said that they have recovered 1 trillion. Then they will go to the EFcc recovery account, and then they will see only 900 million, and then they will ask, why is 100 million? So those are some of the disparities that I hope, God willing, we are going to digitalize the process, we are going to be transparent, we are going to show accountability on everything that we do going forward. Senator Bulkachua more or less asks regarding the issues of properties, etc. In the EFcc, we have a full-fledged Directorate of Asset for Future and Recovery Management, a full-fledged directorate with directors, with director at the headquarters, as well as offices in all the zonal offices of the EFcc that manage assets on entering for future orders, as well as on final for future orders before disposal or being handed over to their victims. We are working on that. We are working on digitalization of the process. We are working on putting the records up to date. The government, even as we speak, are working on that as well. And more so because we already have a federal government committee that is working regarding all these assets. Very soon, I believe, Nigerians will know about that and benefit that they can derive from such properties. Senator Suleiman Kwari asks about how I'm going to conduct internal self-cleansing of the EFcc. Here also, Mr. President, distinguished senators, we have a full-fledged Directorate of Internal Affairs that police the officers of the EFcc. And of course, we are going to work on that. We are going to reposition it so that the directorate is going to be proactive rather than reactive when somebody is writing one complaint or another against any erring staff of the commission. So the self-cleansing is going to commence with working regarding repositioning of that department, as well as ensuring that everybody get the message clear. Distinguished Senator Abdullahi Adamu asked about one thing that I feel that I can do differently. And that thing is leading by example, sir. Leading by example. I've always done that with all sense of modesty in all the bits and zones that I have handled. I've never been in office a minute after 8 except if something happened. Not that I cannot come in 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock, but I try to, as much as possible, to ensure that I'm leading the pack. And that is an area where I feel that I'm going to make difference as the next executive chairman, if confirmed. Not only on coming to the office early or late, but in all ramification regarding what is expected of an ideal EFcc operative, detective, or prosecutor, and indeed a staff of the EFcc. And thank you very much, Senator OLUREMI, for the motherly advice you gave earlier on. Thank you, sir.
Senator Patrick Abamoro.
Distinguished colleagues, my name is Abba Moro. I represent the very good people of the Benue South Senatorial District. Mr. President, as a teacher, I can attest to the eloquence and the power of articulation of Mr. BAWA. Yet, there are a few issues that have been trending in the public domain in recent times with respect to EFcc that requires some clarifications, and of course, to which your answer may be a benchmark even for yourself as you journey on and you leave office, be able to say if you have done well. And one of such issues, Mr. BAWA, is the issue of asset forfeiture, management, and disposal. When confirmed as chairman, how do you intend to navigate and tackle this thorny issue in order that the EFcc does not run into trouble with the public? Thank you, Mr. President.
President, my distinguished colleague, for long, this country has been clamoring for generational shift in governance, that is, involving the youth in governance. And this is one nomination that is most welcome in that direction. And I'm sure with the experience of the nominee from the organization, right from the inception to date, we will see vibrancy and commitment in the fight against corruption. Before I round up, I would like to use this opportunity to say a very big thank you to Mr. President for listening to the cry of the youth. And I'm sure Mr. ABDULRASHEED BAWA, being the representative of my generation, will do us proud and the country will not be disappointed in any way. Having said that, I will still want to just touch a little from what Senator Goje said. Mr. BAWA, what will you do differently with regards to media? Because right from the inception of that organization, some chairmen are only interested in media trial and showmanship. So much that some were hunting perceived critics in government. So as the representative of my generation, which I believe you will do us proud, you will not disappoint this country, that much I believe. What can you do differently? Once more, congratulations. Thank you.
I want to make firstly, a minor observation, and then my one question. Mr. Nominee, go to page 5 of your CV. Page 5 of your CV. You did certificate in microcomputer operations and management, University of Lagos, 1997. And at the same year, the same 1997, you did your secondary certificate, secondary school certificate, government secondary school, Owerri, in the same 1997. It's not possible. So, possibly a typographical error. Then, my main question. You were opportune to be trained overseas. FBI of US and other sister organizations in UK and other countries. Now in Nigeria, what are those things that are in our laws or are not in our laws that have limited this operation, this successful operation of fighting crime, financial crime in Nigeria? Because you may have your very good intention, but you can't operate outside the law like you quoted. What are those things that if it is implemented here, we can now measure like international similar organizations? Thank you very much.
I want, in making my contribution, first of all, as the former chairman of Senate Committee on Anti-Corruption and Financial Crimes in the 8th Assembly, I want to thank Mr. President for finding a round peg for the round hole in the selection and nomination of Mr. BAWA ABDULRASHEED as a nominee for this the chairmanship position of EFcc. Having said that, Mr. President, having thanked Mr. President for this, I want to say that let me come with my advice first before I round up, Mr. President. My advice for Mr. Nominee is, you know that the EFcc Establishment Act 2004 is an outcome of United Nations Convention Against Crime 2002, which Nigeria is a signatory. And it revolved around 5 thematic areas. One is prevention of corruption, prevention. The other issue is training. The other issue is criminalization and law enforcement. The other issue, number 3, is international cooperation. Number 4, asset recovery. And 5, technical assistance. With all those issues, Edison, I want to advise you that you have to face, if you are confirmed, please, prevention is very, very important. EFcc should concentrate with prevention, not just prosecution. It is very important that we reduce even the crime that comes for investigation by EFcc. Then the other issue is training. I want to advise, having worked with you with EFcc for 4 years, about training of cadets. We have an academy established for EFcc, but in recent times, the last trainings you had in the past 2 years, you did it at NBA in Kaduna. I protested against it because we have enough things to do in the academy instead of taking people to that place. You are not training your cadets to become military officers. You are training to be intelligence officers to manage, to see how they can handle the issues of corruption, fight against corruption. The other one is the asset recovery. We have a mutual legal assistance in the Criminal Matters Act, which we passed in the last assembly. I want to advise that instead of taking MOUs
we resort to this law. If we do resort to this law, the embarrassment we have at international levels, where they write very funny MOUs in terms of releasing money to Nigeria to manage, will be a thing of the past. And then the other advice I want to give is that the Asset Management Agency should be in place. The process of crime bill was passed by the last assembly. It wasn't signed, but it's coming back. I will ask you to believe and support that bill when it is passed, that Asset Management Agency should handle every forfeited and the recovered assets so that it can be managed profitably and you stay out of trouble of auctioning articles and people raising eyebrows. Having said that, I want to say, Mr. President, okay, sorry.
Allow us to continue with this deliberation beyond our appointed time. I so move.
Mr. Chairman, I rise to second the motion as moved by the leader. I so second.
Distinguished colleagues, those in favor of the motion that we suspend Order 13 for the Senate to sit beyond 2 o'clock. And before I ask, the extension, just listen please. The extension is to enable us complete this process. If it is the wish of the Senate that after this round of questions, you should be allowed to go, we should do so. But the process, our guests will have to leave, we'll have to do approval, we'll have to do confirmation, and we feel that that will go slightly beyond 2 o'clock. So if it is the wish of the Senate that after this round of questions and he responds, you should take a bow, the Senate will say so. Complete your decision.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Deputy Chief Whip. Those in favor of the motion moved by the leader and seconded by the minority leader that the Senate sits beyond 2 p.m. Say aye. Aye. Those against say nay. Nay. The ayes have it.
I can testify to the qualification of Mr. BAWA. Yes, I'm just advised. I'm rounding up, sir. I want to say that he is qualified. I've gone with him international communities, attending functions, and I've seen him perform that has been done today. Having said that, Mr. President, I want to say that having listened to Mr. BAWA answer all the questions creditably very well here, that after answering these questions already raised, that he just take a bow and go. And then we consent. This is what I'm saying, sir.
Distinguished Senator Abomoro asks about issues around asset for future management and disposal. I've already answered some of the concerns in relation to asset management from the questions raised by Senator Bulkachua and Senator Yayi. But distinguished senators, going forward, sequel to the outcome of the Presidential Committee on the Disposal of Assets, issues of asset disposal, God willing, will be carried out on case-by-case basis. As we are concluding a case in court, sequel to the court pronouncement, we will go on seamlessly and discharge that asset without necessarily keeping it for others to come after 1 year, 2 years, or 3 years. And I think that will solve most of our problems, as we are hoping and praying that the Presidential Committee will dispose all the assets that are currently under final forfeiture to the government. Distinguished Senator Aisha asked about the issue of media trial, what I intend to do differently. I have an experience I want to share with Mr. President and distinguished senator. Going through my CV, there's an area where I say that I participated in the investigation and prosecution of cases involving petroleum subsidy. And were able to manage the stories very well, despite media prompting and concerns. And I do believe, as well as the management then, that assuming Nigerians and Nigeria knew what we were able to discover, we could have had a different or additional protest that rocked this nation again after the January protest of 2012. So I have a bit of experience on how we are going to manage these issues. But I strongly believe that this issue of media trial is something that is beyond our control when matters are already charged into court. Distinguished Senator Sam Egu asks about certificates that I obtained from Government Secondary School OLUREMI, as well as my certificate in microcomputer operations and management. In there, months were not stated. I finished my WAEC on the 31st of May, 1997. And from that time to the time that I joined Usman Danfodio University, Sokoto, in February 1998 at the age of 18, there was about 8 months. And it was within that period of time that my parents decided that I should go on and have a bit of computer education. And that was when I obtained that certificate in microcomputer operations. Distinguished Senator Sam Egu also asked about having gone around the entire world investigating cases and coming back, what is the one thing that is different between what is happening overseas and what is happening now? What is happening in Nigeria? The one thing that is different is funding. If we have proper funding, I can tell you that law enforcement is going to be different in this country. Anywhere in the world, there is no budget for law enforcement because a single case that is assigned to you, you can't have a budget for it because it can take you around the world. A simple case involving any politically exposed person has a chance of taking you around the world to all the tax havens, to other countries in Europe and in America. So why is that funding? A single case may cost you maybe 10 to 20 million naira. What is the budget for investigation that we have? I'm not privy to any of our budget presentations as at now, but I believe that proper funding can change the face of law enforcement in this country. Distinguished Senator Utazi asks about, did not ask question per se, but advise as a former chairman of Anti-Corruption Committee of the Senate. I assure you that your presentation and your reminder regarding the provision of ONCAC, as well as the way we conduct training of our cadets, will be taken in. And from time to time, if you wouldn't mind, I will still be seeing you for consultations regarding how we can implement some of your experiences in this field. Mr. President, that's the last question that I have here. And I wish to thank you, Mr. President, and other distinguished senators here present for taking time to attend to me in a timely manner and also to listen to all that I have said. I will forever be eternally grateful to you, and I also assure you that the confidence that Mr. President has on me and my colleagues, as well as you, will be repaid with diligent work and work and work and work for the betterment of this country. Thank you very much.
We have been on for the last 2 hours, and I still have 13 senators who have, 14 actually, who have signified interest to speak. Is it the opinion of the Senate that this nominee, having responded to the questions and comments made by distinguished colleagues, about 18, I think 19 distinguished colleagues' questions and comments were responded to by the nominee. Is it the opinion of the Senate that he takes a bow? Yes. Is it? Okay, let me appeal to our colleagues who are not able to speak. Initially, I said everyone who wanted to speak will speak, but there is a limit to how much time we can sit here, and he has been standing there, probably because he's a young man, he has withstood this thing. So I want to appeal to our colleagues, those that have not been able to speak, please to give us their understanding. So once again, is it the view of the Senate that he takes a bow and go? Take a bow. Very successful session so far. And once again, I want to appeal to our colleagues who could not speak. The time has constrained us from recognizing and giving time. So, will the Senate approve the nomination of ABDULRASHEED BAWA as the chairman of the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFcc? Those in favor say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. The Senate in the committee of the whole considered the request of Mr. President CNC for the confirmation of a nominee for appointment as chairman of the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFcc. The nominee answered questions from distinguished senators on economic and financial crime matters and a number of topical issues thereafter. The committee approved the nomination of ABDULRASHEED BAWA as chairman of the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFcc. Is this a true reflection of what transpired in the committee of the whole? Thank you. Confirmation. Will the Senate confirm the nomination of ABDULRASHEED BAWA as chairman of the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFcc? Those in favor say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. The nomination of ABDULRASHEED BAWA is hereby confirmed as chairman of the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission. Congratulations. Thank you very much, distinguished colleagues.
Okay, sir. The leader.